This album is the result of spending the last 2 years studying and arranging Korean folk and children's songs. After workshopping and performing this music with several different groups and seeing a lack of representation for Korean music in jazz, Jordan VanHemert set out to produce an album entitled Nomad.
Before we talk music, let's talk title. The term nomad is defined by someone as a person who does not stay long in the same place, a wanderer. Jordan, how do you define this term, and why was Nomad the perfect title for your newest album?
Yeah, it's really two reasons. So the first reason is because I have a lot of friends who have different identities that they claim as their own. And I have, recently seen a lot of my friends who are either who are mixed or who are like Korean American like me, or just of various qualities and the ways that we identify one another. And I've seen a lot of those people kind of identify themselves as thinking that we're 50% of one thing and 50% of another thing, or like 25% of four things or something like that. And what I had come to realize is that it's a little bit of a reclamation thing. It's like, no, I'm 100% Korean and 100% American, and those two identities don't fight each other. They make up who I am, and or at least they don't fight each other in maybe the traditional sense. And I consider those things like not a detriment, like I had maybe heard from my peers earlier in my life, but as like a superpower. Mm-hmm. And so the first part of Nomad being like a wanderer, it's like, yeah, if you're a nomad, you don't really have a defined home. So I think that when I was thinking about this album, my home is as a Korean person, but also as a jazz musician, and as somebody who calls this music and has dedicated, my life to this music. And so it can be in a way, it's like, okay, well, who am I really first? And it's, no, I'm both things first. Mm-hmm. So that's thing number one. The second thing is the term nomad, it really references I'm glad you used the term like wandering or wanderer, because it applies to the narrative structure of the entire album. So the album as a whole takes you on a journey through like a bunch of like really different tonalities and different kinds of songs and different instrumentations even. And so it's a journey kind of and the album is like programmatically speaking is a journey. So it's really those two things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's amazing. And I just want to jump right into these tracks. You had me at Bird, Bird, Bluebird. With the very first track, Jordan, I was hooked, instantly drawn in by these very nuanced notes, then transitioned to these jazzy over and undertones. I quickly fell in love with what I learned is perhaps the most representative melody among all the tunes of Korean traditional music. So for those who are unfamiliar, as I was, with this song, I did the homework. Let me share that homework with what I learned for people who are unfamiliar. In this song, in the translation of it, the first, third, and fifth lines reference green bean. So here's the story for those not familiar. The Korean general Bang Joon-jeon led an unsuccessful uprising against corrupt rulers and invading Japanese troops in the late 19th century. His nickname was the Green Bean General. Legend says that he was a Korean version of Robin Hood. After attacking corrupt officials and seizing their treasures, he then distributed them to the poor commoners. He was very popular, and many commoners joined his army. His army swept through large parts of the Korean peninsula before Korean rulers requested the Japanese army to intervene. Jun's army, equipped with spears and arrows, was no match against the westernized, gun-wielding Japanese army, and in 1895, Jun was captured and hanged. Korean commoners sang this song to lament the general's death and the failed coup d'etat. And it is said that the widows of Jun's army sang this song to their babies as a lullaby. Wow, what? So when I'm listening to this song and just what is this about? What is its history? Where did this begin? And I do this research and I hear this story. So that means something to me, but I want to know, what does this song mean to you, Jordan? And why did you choose this track as your first to lead off this whole album?
Sure. First, I think I'll start with the second question. So why did I choose this track? Well, musically, what the track does, originally it was going to be the last track. But I thought that, because it ends on this high note and really a lot of intensity in the drums. But I thought actually in the beginning that the melody of the song is really stated, pretty unencumbered by anything else. It's a little, to me, I think it has like a haunting quality to it, a little bit. And I just imagine like that is how somebody might, sing it, and sing the song, because when Korean widows would sing the song, they wouldn't really have like a lot of instruments. And again, it's a commoner, that group of people singing the sort of song. So it's not like a lot of the instruments that you would hear like in other places. And so kind of what I heard of it was like, it's first of all with one foot in the Korean like aspect of it, and like in that first opening gesture is distinctively the Korean melody as on saxophone, but as it would have been heard or is heard, then it goes to kind of a this feel. And what I told the band was that it kind of what I was thinking about, which is a little bit reminiscent of John Coltrane's classic quartet. And so the place that this came from, and I guess I'm now getting into the first question, is that what the song means to me. I have heard, and I think of this song as kind of it's a storytelling song, and the where this tune specifically came from melodically and harmonically in the treatment of it is John Coltrane's treatment of Follow the Drinking Gourd, which he calls and elaborates on his Africa Brass sessions as Song of the Underground Railroad. And I think about the way that these songs would have been a little bit more on the innocuous side to the people who weren't really meant to know what their meaning was. And I think like that, to me, the songs function in a similar way, and they preserve history and tradition and story. And so when I think about these songs, like the pairing of this song, Bird, Bird, Bluebird, Saya, Saya, Panak, Saya, was natural with this kind of a vibe. And, to bring it a little bit full circle, like the reason I think that this song is first is just because I think those like is because of the stories, you know, of Korea in the past. And Korea was repeatedly colonized by various other countries. And I think that like having a Korean national identity and having like that thing that made or that makes Korea itself, and these songs that make Korea itself, those are important to preserve because they were so repeatedly attempted. The erasure was repeatedly attempted. So it means a lot of things to me, and those are just a few of the reasons why it was first. And I think it's a little bit of a dark note on which to start an album, but I really was hoping that people would do exactly as you did and delve into the history of the song.
Yeah, well, you did a beautiful job. And I like how you say it has this haunting sort of beginning to it, but it really sets the tone, and then the way it transitions so beautifully, it's so well done. So that was, now you know, my favorite track. They're all beautifully done. What is your favorite track? If there was only one you could listen to on this album for the rest of your life, or play for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Sure. It's probably the vocal arrangement of Arirang alone, or Horo Arirang, with the full quintet, which is Sharon Cho on the vocal part, and then Lisa Sung on piano, in addition to Rodney Whitaker on the bass, Jeff Schaub on the drums, and myself on saxophone. And the reason that's my favorite is, when this music, a lot of it is Korean vernacular music. It's the music that people sing and know, and it's popular song. And when I think about like the great Sonny Rollins and his tradition of taking popular songs that maybe people were a little bit more obscure, that's kind of what I'm doing with this album. And so when I was I played an event with Lisa for the Korean Cultural Foundation of Philadelphia. And it was a really fun event. And afterward, we were hanging out, and everybody was, sharing, breaking bread together, as it were. Although there wasn't any bread, there was mostly like noodles and rice and things. Anyway, it was such a special time that we all spent together. And then afterward, Lisa and I started playing actually a few songs from this record, and everybody was singing along. And it was a really, really special moment. Like and one of the songs that everybody was singing was Holo Arirang. And so between that being so special and the singer Sharon, she was talking to me, and I was talking to her, because singers a lot of the time, for those who might not know, request songs in their key or in a song that best fits their voice. And so I was asking Sharon about, I'm arranging this song for you to sing. So what is the key that you want? And so we were going back and forth on it. And she gave me one key, and then I arranged the song. And she said, actually, could you arrange it in, could you put it in this key? And it's the key that later we used, that you hear on the record. And she said, the reason is, my dad really loves this song, and he heard that we were recording it, because I told him, and I want him to be able to sing along. So I wanted to fit both his range and mine. And so that's really special to me, to be able to kind of like facilitate that. But then the other thing, lastly, is I have a lot of really great memories in the studio of this song. And it's the way that the arrangement came together. I always think that like writing jazz is so special because you rely a lot on the improvisation of the other people that are in the band. And everybody brings something really, really special. And so as we were playing it, some of some of the parts of the arrangement were not necessarily things that I wrote, but things that were improvised. And especially on the melody on the way out of the song, like after all the improvised solos, was something that Rodney had contributed, the great Rodney Whitaker. And as I was giving the band some feedback between takes, I noticed that, and I said, "Hey, Rodney, I really, really loved what you did there." And he's like, "Oh, you like that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's really, it's unique." And I had not necessarily thought of that particular kind of accompaniment for the melody, but it worked. And I really loved the direction, the motion that it had. And so just the collaborative element of the song and the way it came together. And of course, the way that the band worked together during that session, I have a lot of really great memories of that. It was recorded in March of 2021. And so we were still kind of knee deep in COVID restrictions and things like that. But we made it work, and the band was so, again, so collaborative, and it was a great time in the studio. And I think more than anything else, this song reminds me that that music is so much about the people who surround you in the studio, and that's what make it special. Over and over and over again, like I could give this song to another band and it would sound completely different. I could give this song, to people and have the same members of the band except for one, and just change out one person, and it would sound completely different. So over and over and over again, I'm reminded that music, and especially this music that is derived, from the African American musical tradition, is about the individuals who bring themselves to the music, and that's what makes it special. And so that's my favorite track, and that's why.
Oh wow. Well, that is amazing. What I would give just to be a little fly on the wall, just in the studio when that was recording. It sounds like it was such beautiful energy and collaboration.
Well, we have a video of it on YouTube, and so you can kind of get like a little glimpse into what was going on in the studio. It's a live, or well, kind of a live cut. In that like it's kind of just a take straight through, and so like what you see is what happened and unfolded in real time, and the video is just edited together in a couple of different angles so you can see the various people who contributed.
That's amazing. Well, I'm definitely gonna be looking that up. So let's talk for a moment. Let's switch gears a bit. Representation, right? So representation is important. And the reason, as you know, that if you don't see or hear versions of yourself, your music, your culture in society, it feels as though there isn't a place for you. You decided to make a place and a space for Korean music and jazz. With what you've given in this album, Jordan, what is it that you hope people take from it?
I'm just one person, and I have one point of view. So my story is not the Korean American story, it's a Korean American story. And so what I'm hoping that this record does is that anybody who hears it, or anybody who is maybe into like the music of the people I had said, so Sonny Rollins and John Coltrane, I would hope that they would check out some of the other inspirations behind this record, first of all, and just see like what's out there and how we live in such a big world. And I'm reminded of this by the giant map behind you. And it's such a big world, and there are so many other cultures and perspectives and other ways that cultures use sound, organized sound music, to tell stories, to preserve tradition, to move and stir their own hearts. And so when I think about this record, I want people to understand that what I am I'm not pretending to be an authority on Korean music, because I'm not. And but I wanted to share these sounds that have really moved me, and hope that they move somebody else. And in doing so, I want people to understand that there's more out there than just so-called Western music, and that there are, one of the inspirations for the way that Sharon sings Holo Arirang is the Korean instrument, the haegum, which is like a stringed instrument, and it's bowed, and it's really unique, and it has this really like it has this floaty quality, and she really wanted to kind of share that with people. So I'm hoping that people would go out and listen to Korean traditional music, but also that people are able to listen to music from not just the Korean musical traditions, but other traditions as well. And then the other thing that I'm hoping is that for Korean people who listen to this, I hope they feel seen, and I hope that they feel like there's somebody out there who hears them and wants to create for them. And I, like I said, I really didn't see a lot of that myself. And in terms of like, if I think of either Korean jazz musicians or AAPI jazz saxophonists, I mean, it's a short list of people who have really, really inspired me. And this is kind of me trying to pay it forward, because I believe that art is a way that we preserve culture for the next generation. And I believe I mentioned this when we were talking about I'm Not a Virus. I wanted I'm Not a Virus to be a time capsule of 2020. This record, I really want to preserve these traditions that are very near and dear to my heart, and also to offer like a window for people who might be on the outside looking in and not so familiar, and also a door, like a way of a point of entry. But also, again, like I said, I hope that Korean people, particularly those of the generations who fought and suffered, so that our people would be could be remembered. Particularly, I hope that they feel honored by it, and that they feel like it's a representation that they see and find beautiful.
Well, and I love how you speak to that, for this to be a window and a door, and I think it is beautifully and brilliantly both of those things. As we pay tribute to the generations of Asian Pacific Islanders who have enriched America's history, what is it that you want people to be mindful of, not only this month, but every month, every day? What is it you want people to keep in their hearts and in their minds?
I think if I had to say one thing, it would be that Asian American stories are American stories. Period. And I think that when I look at who we are as a country, the amount of xenophobia that we experience, I just want people to know that there are other perspectives. And I know that sounds silly to say, but when you live one life, it's really common to navel gaze and kind of look at life from your own perspective, myself included. And if there was one thing that I would have people take away from it, it's learn more about other people, get to know other people whose lives are different from your own. Understand that their perspective is valid and a valid way of experiencing the world. But also just understand that, just because you didn't experience something in the same way as somebody else, it doesn't invalidate their experience. When I, and in the, like in the long run, I think that the more we can learn about each other's stories, the better off we are. And I think that our perspectives are really only stand to benefit the more we can do that. And it's about listening openly and listening and truly listening too, not just hearing but listening to one another and understanding our shared humanity. So Asian Pacific Islander, or APAHM, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, is something that I think is a wonderful time to celebrate. But it doesn't need to be the only time that we celebrate our heritages. And that's why Nomad is here. It's to celebrate no matter what time of year.
Wow, it's incredible. And I like how you speak to the fact that, we need to spend more time, not just hearing, but like actually actively listening.
Right.
I try to remind my son, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Do this more,
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Jordan, I cannot thank you enough for this beautiful album that you've produced and shared with the world. We are honored to share your story and your music. Thank you for helping all of us become a bit more aware now. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.